Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are doing something a little different today. We are looking at an article, an academic article in BYU Studies from the spring of 1975. So this is a little bit different because it took me forever to find any source of information about this person. Today we're continuing talking about the first presidency, and I'm going back and filling in some gaps that I had left in the past. So the gaps I have in the very end, it's because people are still alive, and we are not talking about people who are alive. Okay, I don't think that's appropriate, but also because historically it doesn't make sense. The people are still alive, which means they're not done doing things. Yes? Anyways, so I am going back again to Joseph Smith, and his first counselor in the first presidency was named Jesse Gause. Alright, so Jesse Gause is mentioned in the Doctrine and Covenants. And it's really, 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 really hard to find any information about him at all. I did find an excellent article, really, really fabulous, very well researched, and I really would love to have used it. It's something like 45 pages. However, I am choosing not to use it. And the reason is because it was written in 2008, and I don't feel good about using an article that's that recent. I don't feel like it's fair to the person who wrote it, and it's also much longer than really is in our purview in this, situation. So the article I have chosen instead is one written in 1975, as mentioned, by Robert J. Woodford. And this article is entitled Jesse Gause, Counselor of the Prophet. I am trying really hard to get the pronunciation right because I keep wanting to say Gause. His name was not pronounced Gause, it was pronounced Gause, as Aaron Jennings, who wrote the second article, pointed out. I did look at the article a little bit. I will link it down below. If you want more detailed information about this person, go ahead and check out this article because it is excellent. Fantastic, fabulous, and I really just don't think that I think it's a bit too much for this setting, for the video. So instead, we're going to look at a much shorter article about Jesse Gause. It is pronounced Gause because it is English, it is not German. I know it's a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to pronounce it Gauss, which is from like Carl Friedrich Gauss, who was a very famous mathematician. But he's not German. He's English, which means it's Gause, just spelled with an S instead of a Z. So it's Gause. I will try really hard to get it right, and I apologize if I say it wrong at least once. I know I already have to edit out me saying it wrong at least twice, so I'm hoping that I can get it through my head how it's pronounced properly. So, Jesse Gause. Anyway, what do I know about this person? I don't personally know a lot about this person at all, just what I skimmed through on the article that I looked at that was so excellent. So the article I am recommending to you is called The Consequential Counselor, Restoring the Roots of Jesse Gause, by Aaron B. Jennings in the Journal of Mormon History, volume 34, number 2, in JSTOR. Page 184 to 227. It is quite a long article, as I said. And so it's too much for what we're doing here. But please, take a look at it if you would like to look at it. It is excellent. Anyway, so let's take a look at this article. All I know really about Jesse Gause is that he was a bit older than Joseph Smith. He was called as a counselor in the first presidency, and he was in there for maybe 6 months at the absolute most before he kind of lost interest and stopped doing anything interesting, and then he died shortly thereafter, and I'm not sure why or from what. And hopefully some of these questions will be answered. I unfortunately do not have a photo of him. As far as I'm aware, there are no photos of him. And so I can't have any in the background. So I will, as you can see, I'm sure. So I will have some stock videos in the background. This is what I will do in the future as well with anyone I don't have photos of. That does happen sometimes. So, especially someone who never bothered to have their photo taken. But, for example, Joseph Smith never had his photo taken either. It's just that there are a decent number of portraits that have been painted of him, even during his lifetime. And that's why we know what he looks like, plus the death mask of himself and his brother. So, anyway, just throwing that out there, but Jesse Gause, I don't believe, ever had his photo taken. So, let's take a look at the article. Jesse Gause, Counselor to the Prophet, by Robert J. Woodford. And there's a little asterisk, and it says Robert J. Woodward. Oh, why does it spell differently? Woodward, is an instructor for seminaries and institutes for the BYU Salt Lake Center. I am not sure why there's two different spellings or which one is correct. So, I don't know. I mean, which one would you think would be make more sense to be correct? I'm not sure. Woodford or Woodward? I'm not sure. All right. As we re-study church history, there appears for a few brief moments in 1832 an unobtrusive character who might have become one of the leading authorities of the church, but instead took his exit as silently as he had entered, never to be heard of again. This man, whose name should also be as well known to the Latter-day Saints as are the names of Sidney Rigdon, Frederick G. Williams, Hiram Smith, Joseph Smith Sr., and John Smith, was Jesse Gause. Rhymes with house. No, it doesn't. It rhymes with laws. Okay, I'm not sure. That's interesting that he wrote that rhymes with house. No, it doesn't. No, that's incorrect. And it's interesting because Aaron Jennings, who wrote the other article, did some very deep research on the correct pronunciation. In fact, even to the point of speaking with two of his descendants, as like great nephew or something like that, and asked him how to pronounce his name, and the name is Gause. I'm sorry, that's interesting that he got that wrong. So, anyway, now a virtual unknown, Gause was the first of these men to be called a counselor to the prophet Joseph Smith. And he's mentioned in the Doctrine and Covenants. How Jesse Gause came to such prominence and then faded into obscurity is not known among the pages of church history. Unfortunately, there is so little recorded concerning him that forming a profile of the man is difficult indeed. I can well attest to that. Our earliest reference to Jesse Gause is a member of the Shaker communities in Hancock near Pittsfield, and possibly in North Union, Ohio as well. And there is a footnote. Mario S. DePhillis, The Development of Mormon Communitarianism, 1826 to 1846. PhD dissertation, Yale University, 1961, page 171. That is extraordinarily specific. So no, I did not go that deep into it, but I do find this interesting, yeah? His conversion and baptism are not found in any of the records of the church, but one writer has suggested that he was converted by Reynolds Cahoon in late 1830. Okay, IBID, so it's the same source. It was not until March 1832 when Jesse Gause was called to be a counselor to Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith received a revelation in November 1831 that gave him instructions concerning the organization of the presidency of the high priesthood. Most of that revelation is now found published as section 107, verses 59 to 100 in the Doctrine and Covenants. Joseph Smith was ordained president of the high priesthood on 25 January 1832 by Sidney Rigdon. In the presidency of the high priesthood, that his name is even mentioned in surviving church records. The notation in the Kirtland Revelation book is as follows. March 8, 1832. Choose this day and ordain Brother Jesse Gause and Brother Sidney to be my counselors of the ministry of the presidency of the high priesthood. Another footnote. Kirtland Revelation book, page 10, located in the Church Historical Department. Okay, interesting. 1 week later, a revelation concerning Jesse Gause was received by Joseph Smith, confirming Jesse in his work and giving further direction in his office and calling. There are 2 manuscript copies of this revelation extant. One in the Kirtland Revelation book, located in the church historical department, and the other in the library of the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In both of they're also called Community of Christ today, so in case you're wondering, that's what that is about. In both of these, Jesse Gause's name has been crossed out and Frederick G. Williams' name written above it. The author of this change remains unidentified. Okay. Since that time, all published copies of this revelation, section 81 of the Doctrine and Covenants, list Frederick G. Williams as the one to whom it is directed. Since this revelation contains instructions, duties, and promised blessings to the one called as counselor to the prophet, the revelation was just as appropriate for Frederick G. Williams as it was for Jesse Gause. Okay, yeah, I can see that. After Jesse Gause was ordained, he appeared in a leading role in the church for only a short time. In April 1832, he accompanied Joseph Smith, Newell K. Whitney, and Peter Whitmer Jr. on a trip to Missouri. They arrived 24 April and began holding conferences with the saints in Zion on the 26th. Journal History of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. 24 April 1832, Church Historical Department. See also Far West Record, Typescript, page 24, Church Historical Department. Okay? In the minutes of a meeting at the literary firm held on Monday, 30 April, Jesse Gause was listed as a counselor to Joseph Smith. Far West Record, page 27. Okay. Joseph left Independence that day to return again to Kirtland, and Jesse Gause remained behind to conduct further business. Ibid, page 27 to 34. On his return trip home, he stopped at North Union, Ohio, to retrieve his wife from the Society of the Shakers there. The formal name of the church is United Society of True Believers in Christ's Second Appearing. The church originated in England with Anne Lee as its founder. Okay. Didn't Anne Lee think that she was like the reincarnation of Jesus Christ, though? It's a little weird, right? An elder of the Shaker community, Matthew Houston, wrote a letter to his friend Seth Y. Wells, who was a member of the Shaker bishopric at New Lebanon, about Jesse Gause's vain attempt to reunite with his wife. Okay, my vain attempt. Part of this letter reads as follows. And sure enough, I presume you was acquainted with Jesse Gause from Hancock. He was here a few days since after his wife Minerva. She utterly refused being his slave any longer. He had to go away without her. Although he tried what the law could do for him, he was very much enraged, threatened to take away Minerva's child. What? She presented it to him, but he went away without it and her. He is yet a Mormon, and is a second to the prophet or seer, Joseph Smith. This state of exaltation may tend to steady him or keep him away from us a little longer, for which I'm heartily glad, for he is certainly the meanest of men. Oh, that doesn't sound good. But Minerva certainly conducts herself cleverly so far. We find no fault with her. At any rate, she cut off old Jesse very handsomely, and he felt it to his gizzard. Interesting way of, expressing himself. Matthew Houston to Seth Y. Wells, North Union, 10 August 1832, WHRS, as quoted in DePillis's dissertation, page 184. Spelling errors are in the original. Yeah, I assumed. One important item in the letter is the reference to Jesse Gause as being second to the prophet or seer Joseph Smith. Yeah, I caught that. Upon his return to Kirtland, Jesse was called to serve a mission with Zebedee Coltrane. They began their journey on 1 August 1832 and traveled until the 19th, at which time Coltrane decided to return to Kirtland because of severe pains in his head. After praying with and for each other, they parted. Jesse Gause continued east and walked right out of the history of the church, never again to return. Zebedee Coltrane Journal, page 29 to 35, Church Historical Department. There appears to be no other record of the man, either in or out of the church. Under the date December 3rd, 1832, Joseph Smith recorded, Brother Jesse and Mogan and William McCullen was excommunicated from the church, etc. D. Michael Quinn feels Jesse Gause is one of the 3 men communicated on that date. See D. Michael Quinn, The Evolution of the Presiding Quorums of the LDS Church, Journal of Mormon History, Volume 1, 1974, page 24. Some months after the departure of Jesse Gause, the presidency of the high priesthood was reorganized with Frederick G. Williams replacing him as counselor. This reorganization was commanded in Section 90 of the Doctrine and Covenants and actually took place on 18 March 1833. Joseph Smith Jr., History of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, edition, B.H. Roberts, second edition, Rev, I don't know what that means, Salt Lake City, Deseret Book, 1959 to 60, Volume 1, page 334. Oh my goodness. Sometimes the citations are longer than the actual quotes. All right. That's all they got. He left. He disappeared. And I understand he disappeared in 1832, but they think that he died in 1836. So he went somewhere. I wonder if there wasn't some medical reason why he left. Was he in a fugue state or something like that? I'm speculating, but why does somebody walk away from everything? I understand that he was married and had 4 children. And they never saw him because they applied for support from the state for the orphans. And you don't do that if you know where your parents are. Yeah? He abandoned them. And he abandoned the church, and he abandoned his children, and he abandoned his family, and he abandoned everything. So it's interesting to me, you don't know really what happened. Was there a medical reason, or did he just feel like walking away from his life? Yeah? Maybe he did. Maybe he just went on some weird long-term vacation and decided never to come back. I don't know. But he literally disappeared. Literally disappeared. So because there is a discrepancy on how his name is pronounced, I am going to go to the original article that I mentioned at the beginning, because I want to show you why I feel so strongly that this is correct, the correct pronunciation. So just to reassure everyone that I'm not making this up. All right. So I'm going to only quote this little tiny part. So, sorry, Aaron Jennings, I am trying really hard not to encroach upon your amazing research. And we are just going to look at the pronunciation of Jesse Gause. So, here, this is on the second page of the article. It says, but what else is known about the life of Jesse Gause? Even the pronunciation of his surname has been mysterious. U.S. census takers spelled it phonetically, yielding the following sounds. 1790, Gause, G-O-S-S, or G-A-W-S, Gause. 1800, Gause, G-A-U-S. 1810, Gause, Gause, with a Z. 1820, Gause, Gause, Gause. 1830, Gause, G-A-U-G-H-S, and 1840, Gause with a Z, and without any at the end. It actually rhymes with laws. And she has citations, yes? So we're going to take a quick look at those citations. 3. This pronunciation was verified by Quaker research expert Thomas D. Ham, college archivist and curator of the Friends Collection, Earlham College, Richmond, Indiana, F. Gregory Gause II, Jesse's great-great-grandnephew. Telephone conversation with me, this is Aaron Jennings, April 20th, 2006, and Yvonne Schilling, Jesse's great-great-grandniece, telephone conversation with me, April 20th, 2006. So, she really, really dug in to do her research on that, and that's why I defer to her expertise on this point. And I will be pronouncing it Gause as long as I remember to. So, all right. Now, that's all that this article says, which is not very detailed and it doesn't go into very much information, yeah? So I would also like to take a look at the Wikipedia article and see if there's any additional information there. Now, one of the first things that jumps out at me is a date of birth. I mean, it's not a date, it's a year, but it's more than we had before. Yeah, Jesse Gause, 1785 to circa 1836. But like I said, he disappeared. They're guessing when he died. I'm not sure why they even came up with that date. All right. Was an early leader in the Latter-day Saint movement and served in the presidency of the high priesthood, which later would become the first presidency, as a counselor to church founder Joseph Smith. For decades, Gause was generally unknown to Latter-day Saint historians. It was only in the 1970s and 80s that research identified his rightful place among early church leaders. Yeah, like we knew nothing about him. That's why in the biographical encyclopedia there's not an article on him. There's nothing. And that's why I originally wasn't going to talk about him. But since I found these other more modern sources, then I'm able to say something about him, even if it's not very detailed. So, Quaker and Shaker years. The son of William Gause and Mary Beverly, Gause was born in 1785 in East Marlborough, Chester County, Pennsylvania. Gause followed the faith of his parents, and in 1806, apparently still single at 21, he requested and was received into the Society of Friends, becoming a Quaker. Although a Quaker in good standing, Gause's Quaker's pacifism did not prevent him from joining the Delaware militia in 1814 during the War of 1812. So, even though his religion was very pacifist, he particularly was not, it seems like. Upon leaving the military in 1815, he moved to Wilmington, where he married Martha Johnson. In 1822, the family finally settled in Chester County, where he became a teacher in a Quaker school. Martha died in 1828 after the birth of their fourth child. Yeah, so he had 4 children. Gause resigned from the Quakers on January 30th, 1829 and joined the Shakers. In August 1830, Gause married Minerva Eliza Byram. They settled in Hancock, Massachusetts. Gause's new wife followed him, apparently accepting the Shaker practice of sexual abstinence even for married couples. Yeah, that was kind of a big deal for them as well, yeah. In 1831, Gause, his wife, and infant son moved. His wife, they just said that they didn't have sex, and now they're like, oh yeah, and his son. I'm not sure how that tracks, yeah? Okay, let me start that sentence over again. In 1831, Gause, his wife, and infant son moved to the Shaker community near North Union, Ohio, leaving Martha's 4 children in the care of his sister, who was also a Shaker. Yeah, he abandoned them. He abandoned them then, yeah? So frustrating. Latter-day Saint years. At the same time that Gause was moving to North Union, Latter-day Saints from New York were also emigrating to Ohio, settling in the environs of Kirtland, some 15 miles east of North Union. It is not known when Gause came into contact with these new settlers, but sometime after October 1831, he was baptized. This time, his wife refused to follow him. His second wife, yeah. Gause rose quickly to a position of prominence in his new faith. In an early record book, it states that on March 8, 1832, Joseph Smith chose this day and ordained Brother Jesse Gause and Brother Sidney Rigdon to be my counselors of the ministry of the presidency of the high priesthood. A week later, Smith said he received a revelation concerning Gause's selection as a counselor in what later became known as the First Presidency, as well as giving him additional instructions concerning his new assignment. Smith may have chosen a recent convert for such a responsible position due to Gause's experience with the Shaker Communal Society, because the Latter-day Saints had recently commenced their own communal experiment, the Law of Consecration. Okay, so he wanted his expertise, yeah? Both Gause and Smith's other counselor, Sidney Rigdon, had previously experienced living in communal societies. Gause settled into his new role, accompanying Smith to Jackson County, Missouri, between April and June 1832, in order to set up the Law of Consecration. Upon returning to Kirtland, Gause started on a mission with Zebedee Coltrane on August 1, 1832. The 2 missionaries traveled to North Union, where 6 days later Gause attempted to persuade Minerva to accept Mormonism, but she refused to join him. He then attempted unsuccessfully to take their daughter, but had to leave very much enraged. Wait, I thought they had a son. I am super confused about this, okay? It sounds like he had a bad temper, too. Within a short time, Coltrane became ill and decided to return to Kirtland. The 2 men parted in fellowship of the gospel on August 20th. From this date, Gause simply disappears from church history. It is not known what occurred to sour him on Mormonism, but by the end of 1832, he had denied the faith and was probably the Brother Jesse recorded as excommunicated on December 3rd, 1832. Okay? Yeah, probably. Gause's role in church history went unacknowledged for decades. The revelation given to him in 1832 was altered by replacing his name with his replacement in the First Presidency, Frederick G. Williams. His name was only recognized in the 1980 edition of the Doctrine and Covenants, but then only in the historical introduction to the Revelation. His replacement's name remained in the text itself. Really? Only after historians demonstrated his role in the formation of the church's hierarchy, beginning with Robert J. Woodford. Oh, it is Woodford and not Woodward, in 1975. Oh, really? So that article we read was kind of groundbreaking, yeah? And D. Michael Quinn in 1983 was his name restored to the church's list of general authorities. That's fascinating. See, like, history changes with the more you learn. This is why I love history. That's so cool. Later years, Gause's activities after 1832 are not known. Apparently, he did not rejoin Minerva at North Union, but may have returned to Chester County to be near his other children. By 1836, when he would have been 51 years old, he had died at Montgomery, Chester County, Pennsylvania. In that year, his brother assumed the guardianship of Martha's children. Yeah. However, his sister stated in 1873 that Gause died away from his family, suggesting that he died estranged from his children. Yeah, so it's not sure where he ended up. And like I said, what was he in a fugue state? Because it kind of almost sounds like he was. Yeah. Ugh. So frustrating. Anyway, the references is where I got the information from. So here, down here, there's all these references. Who's Who in the Doctrine and Covenants, he's in there. Deseret News 1987 Church Almanac, and that is the first one where he actually appears. And then there's Aaron B. Jennings, the Consequential Counselor, Restoring the Roots of Jesse Gause, Journal of Mormon History, Excellent article, can highly recommend. But look at that, 45 pages. Yeah, it's long. Michael D. Quinn, fall 1983, Jesse Gause, Joseph Smith's little-known counselor, BYU Studies, in 1983. And then Michael D. Quinn, The Mormon Hierarchy, Origins of Power, signature book, Salt Lake City, Utah, 1994. And then Robert J. Woodford, spring 1975, Jesse Gause, Counselor of the Prophet, BYU Studies. And then 15 March 1832, appointment of Jesse Gause as counselor to Joseph Smith, biography of Jesse Gause, the Joseph Smith papers. Now, I did look at that, at this page, the biography of Jesse Gause, Joseph Smith papers. It is very sparse. It just has facts, basically. I mean, I looked at it, and if it had had more information, I would have used that instead. But it's more like, born around 1784, died around September 1836. He was a school teacher. It just has some like bullet points, basically. Apparently excommunicated, resided in Chester County, Pennsylvania. It's very sparse. So that's why I didn't mention it. I didn't feel like it was written in sentences, It's more bullet points. Anyways, Jesse Gause, I don't feel like I have like an impression of him as a person. It sounds like he had a bad temper, that he was a little bit almost overly religious. Like, he was a Quaker and they were too pacifist for him. And so then he went to another extreme and joined the Shakers. But honestly, the Shakers aren't really that similar to the Quakers in a lot of ways. And they also believed in abstinence even after marriage. And I don't know, like, that's a little weird, yeah? Like, well, how did he get kids if he didn't, anyways. But it's just one of those, like, really weird things where you see him joining all of these churches and then losing interest after a year or two. And so I guess it's not that surprising that happened with the Mormon church as well. And that he joined the church quickly and then left really quickly, He was a first counselor in the first presidency from March 8th, 1832 until December 3rd, 1832. So that is a total of 9 months. That's not even quite 9 months. It's just short of 9 months. And so it's just such a short amount of time, and it's interesting that you just don't know anything about him. And then he disappeared for 4 years, at least 4 years. Like, well, maybe 4 years. It might have been less. I don't know, because they don't know when he died, for sure. They just know that he was dead in 1836 when his wife's brother took over guardianship of his children. Yeah. And the article by Aaron Jennings is also very, very detailed when it comes to that as well. So it's specific. He took over guardianship of 2 children and then the other 2 when they applied for support under like some sort of orphan like support system that they had going on there. Anyways, yeah, like he's not the kind of person that you can really admire, is he? Yeah, you can't really admire somebody like this. Like, you're not very reliable, and you just make these very impulsive decisions, and you have a bad temper. Like, these are not good things. So I wouldn't hold this person up as somebody to admire, but I do find it important to talk about him because he did play quite a large role in the church and in the beginnings of the church, even if today we don't necessarily know who he is. And so that's why I wanted to talk about him today. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope you learned something. If you did, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.